Youth Hope was started in 1936 by some little old ladies who wanted to reach out to young people. It was originally known as the Christian Friendliness Society. Now, Youth Hope ministers to children across the Quad Cities area in Illinois. Today, I interview Mark Drake, who has directed the ministry for the last 37 years. You will be inspired by the story of how Youth Hope has been used by God to change the lives of many young people.
Jesus said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel."
Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast with Dr. Daniel King, where Daniel interviews full-time evangelists, pastors, missionaries, and normal everyday Christians to discover how they share their faith, their powerful testimonies, and amazing stories that will inspire you to reach people with the good news. And now, here's your host, missionary and evangelist, Daniel King.
Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast. I'm Daniel King. I'm excited about telling people about Jesus. Today I have a very special guest with me, Mark Drake from Youth Hope. Thank you for joining me on the Evangelism Podcast.
Thanks for asking, Daniel. Appreciate it.
All right, so Mark, we are here in a beautiful facility in Moline, Illinois, and we are with Youth Hope.
Mm-hmm.
You've been leading this ministry for 38 years now.
37.
And 37.
People think
37 years.
Yeah, 37.
And so tell me a little bit about Youth Hope and what Youth Hope does.
Yeah, it's appreciate you asking. You know, first of all, I want to say, when you say in a beautiful building, we didn't have these facilities, but I've often said we can sell all the facilities. It matters what we're doing with people, right? It's all about the heart of people, because they were reaching a lot of people for Jesus as Christian Friendliness Association, which began in 1936, without the centers. We built the centers and the camps so that we not only have a place to take people, but we also have something that might be magnetic to them, because people sometimes far from Jesus, I call everybody future believers. We're either going to believe on this side or that side of eternity. So everybody's a future believer. The future believers might come in here because it's cool looking, or it has an activity center or a sports center. And if we can get them in for whatever reason, we don't care why they come, we care how they leave, right, Daniel? We don't care why they come to your festivals, right?
Yeah.
To have fun and do it. We care how they leave. So 1936, the women that were in a Bible study really came to...
So 1936, it got started. And what's the story of the start?
Yeah, good for you. 1936, a group of women in Bible study were seeing a lot of immigrant families to our Quad Cities in Illinois, part of Quad Cities and Moline and Rock Island, Illinois. And they saw the need to reach out and love, and they said they want to give them food, and they had clothing at the time, and then teach them about God's love. So it was all by seeing the need that they decided to start Christian Friendliness Association, which became Youth Hope. And it's grown since then, not any different in heart or spirit, but in what our reach and breadth of it is.
Yeah. So what are some of those core values that have led Youth Hope over the years?
Yeah, first off, the way it started, we want to see the needs in the community, to say, what are the needs? We're doing a mentor program with schools, and there's need to support teachers because it's so chaotic in public schools. There's programs not in schools anymore. So how can we be a partner with? And that's exactly what they looked, and they saw people immigrating saying they need food, they need clothing, they need friendship and God. So again, the core value, I think, for all of us believers is to say, what's the need? Because the need's going to get filled by somebody or something, but we have the hope of the world and the true answer. So we can meet physical needs. We still have a food pantry here. If we can meet needs with art, because they got art programs are dropped in schools, and that leads them to the hope of the world, then we got them on the right path.
Yeah, as I was touring the facility, I'm absolutely amazed. I mean, you have a dance studio, you have an area dedicated to art, you've got a beautiful gymnasium, you've got a food pantry where you're giving out food, and there's lots of people lined up there today waiting to get food. And so you're looking for needs, you're helping to meet those needs. Now, tell me a little bit about your story. it started back in 1936. You weren't there originally. You've come, but you've been here for a long time.
Yeah,
So how'd you get a part of Youth Hope?
It ends up being a calling, but it was really motivated by, I was a delinquent youth in the Quad Cities Prefecture. My mom lives 2 blocks from this particular center. And when I came to Christ a month later, I left for Yosemite National Park. Then I left to go to college. And then I went to graduate school and seminary and then worked a couple places. And I always felt a need to come back to the Quad Cities to share Jesus with all the people I hadn't before I left, because I just became a Christian. So my story began that I decided I was going to come back to Quad Cities and commit for 2 years, because I wanted to share with my old drinking friends. I wanted to share with family. I wanted to share with people that would be marveled at what God's done in somebody's life, because I was a delinquent. And so my mom actually saw an ad in the paper about an opening for somebody who worked with troubled youth. She said, "This would be perfect for you." And it was called Christian Friendliness Society. And I came here to do that and pursue God that way.
Yeah. And then you got involved. Mm-hmm. And how long did it take before you rose to being a director?
Well, that's a director of an area, Michigan minimum security prison here for juvenile boys. I used to do ministry out there on Wednesday nights too. He said to me, "Mark," said, "the problem with you is you're coming as the director of youth, but you're also coming as the director of the whole organization." So I never got promoted. I came
You started out as...
I was the director and director of youth, and I didn't know what that encompassed. I came here to work troubled youth, and they said, "Well, you're in charge." And that was it. I had no training, anything. I have a master's in counseling, went to seminary in counseling. And so I had no business training. I had no, how do you run an organization? I didn't have any teaching me, so I sought mentors. So I just kept going forward with my heart to reach people, and I'd see needs. Like one great needs, I went to probation. I was going to court with this one boy over and over, and the one probation officer pulled me aside and said, "You know, he has the biggest file on probation in our county right now." That's how rough and tough this kid was. That's why I love him. I think it's great, and he needs the Lord. And they took me back, met head of probation, and everybody's going, "Well, who are you?" "I work with this Christian organization." They go, "Oh yeah, we know Christian organizations around. They're kind of doing their thing." And I realized, Daniel, we should be their hope. We should be the first people they turn to. And I said, "Hey, we'll work with any probationary youth you have." "Oh man, we have a need." And so again,
they say, "We got all kinds of people want you to work with."
Yeah, and so that's where it began the concept. I think God started planting that seed that we needed to be not the best kept secret in the Quad Cities, but the light on the hill. And so God gave me I'm a deer hunter, and I actually wasn't getting a deer, and I was doing all what spiritual men do. Then you talk to God about the deer, and then I felt like he was breaking my heart out there one day saying, "You don't really love the kids you're working with." And I was like telling him why I do and what I've done, of course. And he said, "I want you to commit a place for them to come to." So a few years down the road, we opened the Rock Island Youth Center, so they have a place to come to and get off the street.
And so over all these years of ministry, you've seen many transformed lives, many miracles that have happened. What are some of the stories of the miracles that God has done?
Oh, Dan, when I first started, there was real big gang stuff going on in the Quad Cities, and we opened the Rock Island Center, and then we opened the Moly Center. We started calling it, and then we opened the camp, and we call it the 3 parts. We go out and find them, we pursue them. And unfortunately, in fact, I just saw a demonstration of it today. Unfortunately, quite a bit of the church has stopped looking out here, and they look in here, right? And we
instead of looking out at the community,
we got to keep going after them.
They stay inward focused.
Right. And then we open centers to bring them in, and then we open camp to get them out of their environments for a week or a weekend to just, I call it a purification time. It's kind of like these kids are born on the north side of Denver, and they're a drop of water, and they land in the water, and it's a real pretty stream when they're an infant, possibly, and then it goes through the sewer system of Denver, and they come out, and there's muck. So we're taking them on there, we're purifying that water for a week or a time, get them away from music and their phones and the gangs and everything.
I mean, that must be a great experience for a young person to, go from TikTok all the time to being out at the campground.
Yeah, and Dan, you were talking about creation. You start with creation. I was one time out there, we were clearing woods to put in our basketball court and using chainsaw, and a tough kid came up and he's involved in a gang, and he's like, man, I gotta go to the bathroom. I said, well, just find a tree, dude. And he's like, what? Just go out. So they're there right away. They'd never experienced that. So he ran across the whole field to go way down in the woods to go to the bathroom. I don't know why. So I'm fixing chainsaw. He comes running down, not even all the way finished yet, screaming, and he was scared of something. And I'm thinking, what in the world could be so scary out here? And he ran into, he called it a prehistoric bird. It was a wild turkey. It was in rut. But how far this kid in a housing complex who doing gang stuff, he was from the creator and the created, right? That we have dominion over that, and that's meant to be enjoyed, and he's scared of something he shouldn't be, and Satan's twisted his mind to think that's the fear, but his life, you can put it back in the hood. That
you might run into a gang, but let me introduce you to Mr. Turkey.
Exactly. the comedy, but then as soon as I said, hey, that's just a turkey, don't worry about it. Man, you tell anybody I wet on myself, I'll kill you. Right away, the tough guy came up, right? Thinking the guys scared of a turkey's threatening my life, right? I said, that's not how, we had a lesson about how you talk to men, and I said I would never do that. So when the group was coming back, I said, let's start a water fight. And he said, why? I said, because we're going to get all wet. And so we started a water fight as soon as they got there, and everybody was wet then, right? So he got that, but it's just that whole thing. So stories like that to me are taking people back in the woods to creation, and getting them there so that they can hear the Creator's whisper out there. We've been fortunate enough to have quite a few people live with my wife, Sarah, and I, and it's really neat. One Asian boy that became like an older son to us, and he's, he don't want to tell you, but he's in his 40s now, but he was with us, and he came to Christ, and he had sisters and cousins all involved, and he said, I got to get back home. We're like, well, how come? And he goes, because if I don't get home quick, I won't even get a place on the couch. And his name's Suk. And I said, Suk, what are you talking about? He goes, well, my cousins are living with us, and my brother, he had a bunch of brothers, sisters, and they're from Laos, and said, and Sarah looked at me, and I said, is it okay? She goes, yeah. And I go, well, you want to come stay here? And he lived 2 cities away from us, and we offered it to him, and it was like one of those funny things in a movie. We feel like he shut the door, and we start talking about it, and he's knocking, and he already went home and packed his one bag. it was that fast, and he was moving in, and
wow.
It became life-changing from us and our kids, because as he walked with the Lord, he's a minority, and they don't see that. My kids don't see that. They saw Suk. He's our brother. Mm-hmm. And we've had different races live with us. And so the life transformations I've seen, like Suk and this other boy, are amazing, but it also always impacts our life, doesn't it, Daniel? And our kids' lives. Yeah.
Tell me some more stories of this transformation in people's lives that's happened over a period of time. Because evangelism isn't just something that happens in a moment. Sometimes it takes a lot of work and effort to bring people to where they're walking close with God. So what are some of the people
before we had a camp, I used to take kids in vans to the Boundary Waters, the Minnesota-Canadian Boundary Water. We take them out in canoe, backpacks, and you camp out there. You make your own latrine, just to make them really get away from everything. There was a young man, he was a teenager then, but he was involved in a GD, he's a gangster type, and said he gave his life to Christ, discipling them. All of a sudden, he shoots 2 people. Fortunately, they didn't die. Goes out for pizza. That became this big thing in the community at that time. I remember the chief of police at this task force I was on said, how can somebody go out for pizza with that? And I said, hey, if you don't respect the Creator, you don't respect what He created. So, this boy went to prison, and then I was sitting in the office in here. I look back years, say 10 years later. Yeah. He comes walking out in dreads and everything, and I said, how you doing? And I'll leave his name out, but he said, man, he goes, I just got out. I go, I had to come find you. And I go, I'm glad you did. What's going on? He said, God was speaking to me while I was in prison. I got in solitary a lot, and he said, and all those things that you was telling me, they're true. And he said, I had time to think about all the people that tell me all these other things that got me where I was at. And he goes, I just want to tell you, I believe him now. And to me, that's transformation in God's time. Wouldn't be the way you and I'd want it, right? I'm sure he wouldn't want that way, but he got there because we lived for this real short time on earth. And that 10 years seemed, I wasted my whole life, is what he kept saying. I said, now let me tell you, and they're true. Satan wants you to believe that. Because now, what was he, 30-something? I said, you're 34. And if you believe that, then you believe there's nothing left to do but to trash your life or take whatever you want from life. But you're 34. You can do amazing things now. He went on to have a family and stuff. So God transforms lives in his time.
And you've really seen God do amazing things. And a lot of it has come because of your many years of faithfulness. What advice would you give to someone who might be young in the ministry and like just starting out like that? I mean, you starting out with just a position, and now seeing what God has done through Youth Hope, I mean, it's really miraculous. So what advice would you give to someone young in ministry who maybe wants to give their life to serving God?
Oh yeah, I think two things, and I think you maybe saw this with your parents. One of the best things you can give to as a leader is longevity. Because when you're there a certain amount of time and then you leave, you've never grown to where God wants you yet, because he's growing us all the time, right? So he's wanting to transform your life. And by you growing and transforming where he has you, it becomes impactful. And then just even today in our meeting, the one young man that came in, he wanted to see me. He goes, I can't believe you're still here. And he's in his 30s now. No, he's at 41. Mark, I can't believe you're still here. I gave him familiarity. I gave him comfort. I introduced him to pastors over there and said, hey, I'm still going to be around. Let's go to lunch, but here's some guys I want you to meet, because it gives them that consistency. It's in that journey that we grow the most. And the other thing I'd say to young leaders is, if you're gifted, even if you don't feel like it, I struggle with the imposter syndrome. Even if you don't feel like it or think you are, and you can't hear it when people say it, you'll get chances and opportunities. And it may look like this is it. I had a great campus ministry recruit me. I had one, a ministry for Eastern European ministry that would be based out of Colorado Springs, and they recruited, and then a mega church that was really on the boom then. It would be a name you would know, that recruited me 3 times, and it was so honoring. But I remember my pastor and his wife at that time. And so, young leaders, listen to this. Unless you're released, you don't have a right to take the calling. And that was a great word to me, because the excitement of the potential of growth and the things I could do, and maybe make a world impact. But you got to go back home and say, has God released me yet where I'm at? Even if it's hard right now, even if I'd kind of like to get out, because there's times in every ministry that I'm sure you even had at times like, one more adventure in a different.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges you faced with Youth Hope over the years? What does it take to keep a ministry like this going?
Well, it's grown and grown and grown. I think it takes humility to say, I don't know how many times I've said to people, I'm really not good at anything but finding people.
But God still manages to do something with me.
My wife and I are working on a book, and I titled it, It's Amazing What God Gets Done with What He's Got to Work With. In the 50 mistakes I made to build a ministry.
50 mistakes.
Well, you
didn't have just 1 or 2.
I had to narrow it down. There was a lot more I wrote down, but I'm trying to narrow down to go which ones are the most impactful that I can do. I'm trying to do it in 1 to 3 page, almost proverbs.
Like what were some of a couple of the biggest mistakes?
Right off the bat. I came here at 25. I had my master's plus. I was working
at 25, you know everything.
I knew everything, dude. I was working at a college campus, charged of 2 halls, the biggest 2 halls, and a full-time interventionist counselor for suicide ideology and counseling students is alive on a college. And I came here, and our first building here was a house in the middle of a small residential neighborhood with the stairs that go up the back door. And I remember the first day I reported, I go in early, no one's there, and I go to the back door, and there's an aluminum storm door, and it was stuck. And I was like, God, why did you call me here? I'm like so mad at God, going, what am I going to do in this little neighborhood? What do you possibly? And as I leaned my head against the door, and I was like, okay, God, I'm going to give you 2 years. I told him, I'm going to give you 2 years. I went down, I got my tools, and I fixed the school. That's the first thing I did as executive director here, right? And it was only called director then. But I was so dishonoring to God that if God calls you, and I felt like he'd call me here, but I was already begrudging God for calling me to such a lowly position that nobody knows I'm in this aluminum storm door. You know, when you're 25, you kind of want the lights and the.
Sure.
You know, and I had a lot of attention there, and so that was the first one. Is the first mistake was right on the first morning to go. Man, when God calls you, embrace it because He's got a big plan, and we say that, but we don't believe it in the moment. You know, and so that would be the beginning of the mistakes. But the journey was tremendous because He took a young man that was trained in counseling and started teaching him how to lead. And he did that through a lot of people too, right?
Yeah. So now you're going through a time of transition. And the reason I'm here is because you've asked my sister, Esther Joy King, to come on board and to take a leadership role here. And what are some of the dreams and visions that God has placed in your heart for the future of Youth Hope?
It's a really cool question, Daniel, because when the first year I was here, a board member asked me to put together kind of a 5-year dream vision thing without a committee, just say, hey, what would be for you? And one of the things is to move across the river from Illinois, Iowa, around to Mississippi, and to reach people in Davenport too, because it impact back and forth too. And with your sister, we were just met with people from Davenport. They called us to take over a youth center there, and it was fun to be here still, to be a part of that beginning.
So that was an idea you had back when you first started in the first 5 years.
God. Yeah, it was right off.
And now that's one of the interesting things. God puts dreams and visions in your heart, and some of them are for next year, but some are for a long time.
I'd written on that 5-year plan. I have to look at it again. I think I showed it to your sister, but I think it was in 2 years later. It was supposed to happen 30-some years ago in my human mind.
Sure.
But God had started that ball moving way back then, knowing in His time, right? And in human time, we think it's a long time ago, but not for God, right?
Well, I'm super excited that my sister Esther is going to be here. What a tremendous blessing that is. You know, our family comes from a great legacy of ministry, and so I'm so proud of her.
Yeah,
and it really is amazing. I mean, I think you're very wise, because like a lot of ministries in America, sometimes the leader holds on to everything.
Right.
Like I was just last week with a pastor from Japan, and he was telling me that 50% of the pastors in Japan are over the age of 80. I mean, that's a situation where they've held on too long and not given it over to the next generation. And so I think you're very wise to start looking for the next generation. And I'm very honored that you would bring my sister here to be part of Youth Hope. And I think that, you know, God always moves from level to level, from glory to glory. Yeah. And so there's been great victories in the past. Sure. I think there's going to be great things happening in the future. Yeah, but I always hope. We had an opportunity in Galesburg to take on an armory in Monmouth, and we've had opportunities to go expand bigger, but I was never able to do it in building what I felt God had me build here. But I dream of that, and your sister actually started talking about some of those because she has contacts there. So it's just cool to go, wow, we almost did this and we didn't, but maybe now it will still come to fruition. But don't give me too much wisdom. At 55, it felt like God nudged me and said, put in your notice. So I put in a notice board, I'm resigning. They're like, what? And I was like, in 7 years. You know, and I really thought God was saying 62, and I didn't know financially how or if I could. But it didn't matter once God nudges you, because He has His plan and His time. And I see it all coming together, and it feels great. I hope to do a lot more ministry, a lot of other things, and still help here. But we're still growing, and I'd rather be going on the way out when it's still growing than staying so long that it's going flat or declining. And I've seen that in churches. Being here 30-some years, you see that. And you see it in ministries too, that somebody hangs on, like it becomes too much of an image of who they are. And this was never mine. You know what? It was all God. And for a season of time, He, never know what God can do with what He's got. He didn't have much to work with, but He did a lot, right? And He plans to do a lot more. Yeah. Tell me one more story of someone's life who was changed or what God has done through Youth Hope.
Yeah, it just happens to be another young man that comes right to mind because he just passed away in 2021. So he was a young man. He's in his 40s. But he was around the same time as Suk. His name was KK. He's from Laos too. But in 2020, in March of 2020, he called me from California where he was living with his wife and kids and said, hey, we got to meet with a surgeon to find out my final diagnosis of some liver problems. And he said, we think it's going to be real bad. And I hadn't heard from him for years. He said, would you come out here? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and so flew out there and went with him, and they said, hey, if you make it till Christmas, it'll be amazing. And he ended up going through Christmas till the next September. But during that time, there was a real time of reconciling him with God again. And it never had left him. He still believed in God, but he had, from his past and culture, Buddhism was kind of almost like the whole theory of, hey, it's all the different ways to get to God. And he wanted to carry them both together. And so, because we were so close, and I brought Suk to, when he came here and visited too before he died, and Suk talked with him too, but it's so close, just be able to say to him that we have a jealous God, and there is a different God, and here's where in Scripture, and I think you know that in your heart, and just to see him, he's in glory now, and to see it all get adjusted and well and witness to his family. So it's a privilege when you stay long enough somewhere to be a part of those phone calls and those people, and to know, one of the greatest wisdom for young leaders, like you said earlier, I would say is, don't try to count what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're supposed to do. Plant the seeds, do the water, because one comes out of prison, one of them's on his deathbed. You don't ever, know, and it isn't their place I failed. I shared the gospel for a year here with troubled youth. Took them to Boundary Water. I'd had guest speakers, videos. I was trying everything. Not one teen gave their life to Christ. I literally was thinking about quitting my first year but I'd made a 2-year commitment, so I stuck it out. But I was like, I got to be the worst evangelist in the whole world, because I tried everything. And we go to the beach up there at the end of a week in the Boundary Waters, and the guy guiding said, hey, I feel like God's leading me to do, in last message, he said, go for it. If God's leading you, go. Every team but one gave their life to Christ on the beach that night. Every team. And I realized, and they start talking about all they learned from the different speakers. And I realized, Daniel, we have no power. We can't do it. And God wanted to show me, it has nothing to do with you, Mark, but be faithful what I ask you to do. And in my time, I'll do my thing. And
I think it's really significant. You've shared these two stories about these two young men from Laos. Last year, I went to Laos.
Oh, did you really?
And got to minister there. And ministry there is very difficult. It's a communist nation. Like you said, they're Buddhist. Yeah. And the communists actively persecute the church. And for the believers there, they pay a very high price. Yeah. And so it's very hard to reach people in Laos. But yet God brought them here, and you were able to reach them. And so I think people really need to be looking for opportunities that God puts people right in our backyard.
Right. To reach the world.
Whether it's immigrants, I mean, we have lots of new immigrants coming to every different part of America. Immigrants are coming. And some people get upset about it, but I think as the church, we can recognize this is God bringing the mission field to us. And, it could cost thousands of dollars to fly to the mission field, but right in our backyard, there is a mission field of people that need Jesus. Yeah. And that's what Youth Hope is all about, is looking for the mission field right here in the Quad Cities area.
We have a lot of immigrants here.
Doing everything you can to reach this mission field that God has brought us.
I love your image of that too, because even being human, like you, I don't agree with illegal immigration, period. But as a believer, illegal or not, it doesn't matter if they're there to share. God may have,
there's lots of scriptures that talk about welcoming.
Yeah, who cares? Again, like they come in our centers. Who cares what why they came? We care how they leave, right? So they come here. Wouldn't it be cool if so many of them are coming to Christ? They're going back to their countries to share. Hey, I found the hope that we all need down here. And it's not more material things or more money or the plethora you can find in America. It's in your heart. because you can be lost sometimes, I think, faster in America because everything can become your God. You know, you don't need God very much over here compared to places you've been, I'm sure.
Well, I'm so impressed being here at Youth Hope. It's so amazing to see what God has done.
Amazing.
So many miracles. And thank you so much for sharing some of your story today.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And God has more for you. Your story's not finished yet.
Hopefully. I'm hoping, I know an evangelist now, and I hope to carry his beans and rice on a missions field.
You're welcome to come anytime. We'd love to have you.
Okay.
But Brother Mark, thanks for being on the Evangelism Podcast.
All right. God bless. Thank you.
Are you called by God to be an evangelist? Do you want to lead millions of people to Jesus? Do you desire to be trained in the practical side of building a ministry? Then check out the Daniel King School of Evangelism. Learn how to be an effective evangelist from Dr. Daniel King's 20-plus years of experience. Daniel King has done crusades all over the world in over 70 nations and has seen over 2 million people give their lives to Jesus. But it wasn't easy. There was no crusade school. So Daniel traveled the world, learning from and observing top evangelists, noticing how they successfully won souls for Christ. Now, he wants to share decades of knowledge and experience with you. Topics of the Daniel King School of Evangelism include what is an evangelist, how to be a master soul winner, how to give an altar call, how to organize a crusade, how to raise money for your ministry, and much more. If you want to be an evangelist but don't know where to start, the Daniel King School of Evangelism is for you. Enroll today in the School of Evangelism by going to danielkingministries.com/evangelism.
Thanks so much for listening today. I am excited about telling people about Jesus, and I want to invite you to be a part of helping us to rescue people from hell and take them with us to heaven. There's 2 things you can do to help. First of all, can you go find the Evangelism Podcast on Apple iTunes and leave us a positive review? By giving a review, you will help other people find these valuable resources about sharing our faith. And second, would you become a financial partner with King Ministries? Every single dollar that people give us enables us to lead at least one person to Jesus. And so that means for only $1, you can help start a party in heaven. And so today I want to invite you to become a monthly partner. You can start out for just $1, but if God puts it on your heart to do more, of course you can do more. But please go to kingministries.com and become a monthly partner with us today to help us to lead more people to Jesus. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
For more information about how to share your faith or to financially support our worldwide evangelistic outreaches, visit kingministries.com. Again, that's kingministries.com.